can see the wonderful faces of all of the people that are online today. And and as I introduce them, I'll ask them to come on and just tell us a little bit about how they came to be at PADS and what their role is. So, and we'll get going. So today we are focusing on the puppy raising stage of Bright's life. And so we have three lovely ladies with us and a fourth that may be familiar to some of you, but also has a connection to this story as well. So first of all, we have Sorella Silver, who is joining us, and she is one of Bright's puppy raisers. So feel free to say hi, Sorella, and tell us a little bit about how you came to be a PADS volunteer. Oh, and unmute yourself. Ladies, you can all unmute yourself right now if you like.
Yeah. Okay, hi everyone. Yeah, so I have been with PADS for almost 5 years now. Years and years and years ago, my sister-in-law, Michelle, who was living in Vancouver, was puppy sitting with PADS. And I always thought that was super cool. And then years later, it just showed up on my Facebook one day and I thought, oh, I should look at doing this. So I did, and it's been the best choice I've ever made, maybe except for my husband. So I started off as a puppy sitter. My first dog was an export puppy. So I had little Frost, who ended up down at Southeastern Guide Dogs. And I had her for 3 months. And then I went back to sitting. And one day Jan asked me if I might want to sit for Bright. And it ended up being that I kept her after that. So again, a wonderful thing that happened.
That's awesome. And I didn't introduce our silent participant, but I am, because she has a little bit of a connection. She was actually Bright's first landing spot when she came to Calgary. So Lanny, who is our amazing closed captioner that comes on every week and captions our podcast so that those of you that need that have it available to you. So thank you, Lanny. But Lanny also had Bright for a short period of time. So we're extra glad she's here. And Jan Donald is Bright's other raiser. So Jan, same question I asked Sorella. How did you come to be at PADS?
Well, I've been with PADS, I think 8 years now. In my working career, I was a psychologist and I always really believed in therapy dogs. I had a beautiful chocolate lab who everybody told me should be a therapy dog. And I'm like, well, yeah, but I don't know how to train one. And a couple of years later, I retired and I met another PADS volunteer just at the dog park, and he had 2 lovely dogs, and I just happened to strike up a conversation. And he said that one of them was a PADS dog, and I said, tell me more. I will never forget the first day I walked into a PADS class. It was back in Southwest Calgary when we were doing those live classes. And I walked in the door and there was this room with 30 Labradors in it. That was when we were working mostly with Labradors. And 30 people and 30 Labradors. And I thought, oh my word, I've landed in heaven. So very shortly after that, I got Calypso, raised her. She's off as an AFD dog with the RCMP in Penticton. I raised Cisco after that, who is working with a client in the Okanagan as an assistance dog. I had Lilo in there for a very short time, who's very close to Tara's heart. And then Bright came to me after that. So
nice. So a lot of dog years old in this group. So So the last lady we're going to introduce is our lovely Heather Kidd, who has joined us from her vacation. So thank you for joining us, Heather. Heather plays a very special role in our program in that she helps lead our puppy program. And so it's kind of a behind the scenes job in a lot of ways, but a really, really important one because the bulk of the dog's training is done during puppy raising. So Heather, tell us a little bit about how you came to be at PADS and how many eons you have been here.
Well, thanks for having us, Tara. I've been at PADS for about 12 years. And I first had kind of learned about PADS. There wasn't a bunch of people here in Calgary, so I didn't see anyone or hadn't met anyone at that point that was involved with PADS. But I had a litter of puppies and I was doing a lot of search and rescue at the time. And I had a couple of puppies that they were just a little different than what we would select for detection or search and rescue type dogs. So I'd reached out to a couple of schools, seeing if any schools had, were interested in a couple of dogs being donated. And I got a hold of, his name was Bob. He was our AD way back when. And he said, yeah, actually we do. But unfortunately, we are shutting our program down in Calgary because we can't find a trainer. And so I said, oh, okay. I hadn't really thought much about it. And then he actually rang me back. He called back and he said, hey, so about your dog training experience, would you be interested in maybe applying for a job? So I was pregnant at the time, and I was on bed rest actually. So I was, my life had slowed down a little bit, and I was just kind of looking at what next. My husband and I had a hunting outfit, but it wasn't full time. So just looking for something that was kind of bridge the gaps between that. And so when Bob phoned back, I said, for sure. So then, yeah, Jackie flew out, interviewed me, and the rest I see is history.
Yeah. I have literally never heard that story. So I learned something today too. So that's fantastic. So thank you, ladies, all for joining us. I love the view that's happening behind Heather right now with her dogs just meandering around the field. It's pretty fantastic. Her collection.
Oh, there's cows there too.
Cows.
Oh, and cows. I missed the cows. So, okay. So for those of you that are in our viewing audience today, if you click on the Q&A box, you can ask these ladies questions. But I'm going to get started and throw it out to Jan and Sarala and ask you, tell us what Bright was like as a puppy, and just what was her personality like. Heather, you can jump in too if you want, because you're smirking already. So tell us about Bright.
I'll start, Sarala, just because I had her as the youngster. I had her for the first, until she was about 6 months old. She was, how do I say, well, super confident, really willing, like excited, happy to work all the time. What are we going to learn? What are we going to learn? What are we going to learn? One of my most memorable things, actually, which it doesn't relate to her PADS job, but I'll never forget it, because I was out at a friend's ranch, and he had this pond, and he had a bunch of working dogs, hunting dogs that he was working, and they were doing retrieves in the water. And she must have been 9 weeks old. And he threw the whatever it was, and all the other dogs went after it. And Bright was just like right in after them. She swam all the way out to the middle of that pond. And I was like, whoa, that's pretty far. And I recalled her. I said, Bright, here. And she turned around 180 and beetled right back to me. And it was just like a thing of beauty. Like she was kind of designed to work and be in relationship with her person.
That's very cool. Heather, what about you? What do you remember about Bright as a baby?
I mean, I think Bright is a good example of service dogs are not always easy, right? Good service dog candidates tend to be a lot of dog at times. And I remember Bright, she's a ferocious chewer and would destroy just about anything. So it just kind of, she's a good example of good working dogs are typically a little bit tough on people sometimes. She was a lot of dog, but a very nice dog all the way kind of through. Always showed lots of good commitment to food and to work, and was kind of was game for anything. So it was always nice to have Sarala coming on as a newer raiser, paired up with someone like Jan. Worked really nicely on a dog like Bright, because I don't think she was always easy. But I'll turn it over to Sarala for more of that stuff.
Yeah, it felt to me like I was learning at the same, Bright and I were learning together, and we had so much support from everybody. Jan was always open to questions from me, and I went to a whole lot of one-on-one sessions with Heather. But Bright was just such a sweet, sweet girl, and every morning she would wake up and it just felt like she would say, woohoo, another day, and what can we do today? And she was just amazing puppy to have in our home. And she wanted, whenever things weren't going right, it certainly wasn't because she didn't want to do it right. It was, I think she just needed to learn to always, she knew what to do, but she needed to learn to choose the right things to do. So, and I had to learn how to help her do that. So, but she was such a great little girl.
Oh, that's fantastic. So Heather, maybe you can tell us a little bit about what is puppy raising. You can all jump in, whoever wants to share, but let's start with Heather in terms of what's involved, like what does the commitment look like for puppy raising? And so what is that process like? What's the responsibility of being a puppy raiser?
Well, I can share with you kind of what our hopes are when we hire people to volunteer for us. And so kind of the hope is that people can take this dog and that we can give them enough relevant information on that weekly call. Hold on a sec here. Miranda, can you, come here, girls. I thought that might happen. They're getting a little close. So they're far enough away though, I'm sure now. It's kind of to take on the responsibility of that maining. Oh, that's Miranda's dog. It's a great recall, by the way. It's kind of to take on what we can provide people in a weekly class, and try to give them as much relevant information that they can take and then apply that throughout the week, 24/7 in public, in the house, and just kind of take the dog that we have given them and try to give them the best chance that they can, not just to be a service dog, but just to be confident and happy and productive and is that, it's kind of that in a nutshell. Is that kind of what you were looking for, Tara?
I think so. And I think for Sorella and Jan, tell us a little bit of the nitty gritty. What does that look like on a day? And I mean, it sounds nice. You take a puppy and it gets to live with you and you get to take it everywhere. What does it look like in the real world? And because I think, you know, it's neat for people to hear that, I mean, these puppies don't come to us perfect, right? And ready to go to clients. Otherwise we wouldn't do this first stage. So what does that look like in the day in, day out, at the different stages? So Jan, maybe talk about it from your early kind of months with her, and then Sorella can talk about what it looks like as the dog gets older.
Well, it is certainly, as Heather said, it's a 24/7 thing, but I want to, it's 24/7, but it's not 24/7. You know, it's with a puppy, every moment is a learning moment. And so things start just from day one when, you know, we're going to be walking out the front door and we teach the dog to wait until the door, you know, until they sit, then the door opens. And, you know, there's just every single thing we do, going out the door, having, feeding them, having a little play session. They're all learning opportunities. And Heather has a great way of saying to us raisers that, you know, are you taking a right turn or a left turn? You know, the decision or the thing that you're teaching the dog in the moment with either your presentation or your consistency, is that more likely to lead to success down the road, the right turn to being a service dog? Or is it maybe going to take it a little bit to the left and we'll have to recalibrate kind of thing? And so in my mind, I always have that as a mindset in the back of, as I'm going through the day with the puppy is, you know, what is the puppy going to have? What's the end game look like? And how am I going to take this little fluffy ball of love and make a bunch of right turns with it?
Yeah. And Sorella, what did it look like as she got older?
Yeah, so I think I at first was a little bit naive, looking back now, that I just thought this was going to be this great time. I'm going to have this great, adorable puppy to have in my home, without realizing the responsibility of what I was really undertaking. And so that really, it hits you at a certain point, especially if, like with Bright, she was very She loved to just be happy and do what she wanted to do sometimes. And I specifically remember one day, I actually used to take Bright to, there's a couple of schools here in town that have a reading program called Puppy Pals. And a couple of us are volunteers, and we take the dogs in to read with the little kids. They read to her and help with their reading. And she was just awesome doing this. And then we were leaving, and I went to stop at a coffee place to get a coffee. And she was like, well, I did what I wanted to do. I really enjoyed that. And now I think I want to go over here. And I was like, but that's not really what I'm asking. I'm asking her to go in the coffee place with me. And it really hit me how I needed to really up the game and make it so that she knew that she always was connected with me, and that the bond between us, or the bond with whoever she was going to end up being with, was the all-important part of her working career. And it really, and from that moment, then I went to see Heather, and I said, what can I do to make things better, to make her really want to do what I want her to do? And Heather helped me out. And from that moment, it was like, it was a game changer. And Bright just became this amazing, amazing dog. Nothing to do with me. I just needed to figure out how to get her to be the best she could be.
Well, I would
And
say,
I think the neat part too about Sorrel had kind of touched on learning together, and I think the learning curve at the beginning is so steep that it can be very overwhelming. And then you pair that with a dog who might have a lot of drive to work, and then trying to learn and teach at the same time is quite a hard task at times. And so anyone who's out there, if they're watching and it's their first dog and they're struggling, it is so fun because part of that struggle never goes away. But when you can start to acquire more knowledge and the stuff that you have on board becomes second nature, then you just get more and more information that allows you to kind of be successful quicker maybe. And then it doesn't seem like as steep of a learning curve, but you still, the exciting part and kind of what I look for when I'm hiring new volunteers is someone who's really going to get a kick out of education, continuing education and learning, because if people are here only if their main goal and what makes them feel successful is a dog to client, a lot of times that doesn't happen. And so when we can have like Jan and Sorrella, where they really love the community, they really love learning, they love dog training, and then we get lucky and we get a client match with these dogs, is like the icing on the cake. So I guess that's a big part of what we expect from puppy raisers too. Not what we expect, but what we hope we're pulling in for people is that, you know, even if we don't get a client at the end of the day, that they've had a really good experience and it is payment all along the way.
That's awesome. So we do have a question from Linda who's watching, and she's asking, so this is for both of you as raisers. When Bright was living with you, what was your proudest / most embarrassing moment with her?
Also, I could start.
And not a slash. So go ahead, Sorrella.
So my very proudest moment, it was actually after I had finished raising her and she had already gone on to go to advanced training. And she was back with me for a weekend, which was such a gift to have her back in the house for a weekend or for a few days. And actually her sponsor is somebody who's part of the PADS community, and Sarah, who was Bright's sponsor and just loved her to death, and ended up with Bright's brother as her service dog, Tonka, which is a great little story. But her good friend, the son of her good friend here in Calgary, had a horrendous bicycle accident. And Sarah asked me if I might take a puppy to the hospital just for him to see the puppy. So my first inclination was not to take Bright. I didn't know how she would be one-on-one in that way. But the other dogs that I considered, it didn't work out. And so I took Bright. She absolutely took my breath away. She jumped onto that bed. She snuggled in with him. She put herself in such a position, this young man couldn't move. She put herself in such a position as to put her head under his hand so he could basically be feeling her. And it was a moment that for the rest of my life I will never forget. And I was immensely proud of her, and it was just an amazing, amazing moment. So at that moment, I knew that Bright was okay for the rest of her life. She will be great wherever she lands.
That's awesome. What was your most embarrassing moment? You skipped over that one. Was there an embarrassing story? We do tell these stories, right? Like, it's not all just
I think for me, every time I went into puppy class and all the puppies were being pretty good a lot of the time, and Bright would just do whatever she was not supposed to do. She would run after that ball. She would try to lunge at the puppies. So week after week after week at puppy class. My favorite comment was, "Oh, but she's so good every other moment of the week."
Yeah. Yeah, I think we've all experienced those puppies at the end of our leash at some point or another. So,
well, awesome. You guys just seen mine. Our dogs normally don't chase the cows, but the cows normally don't get quite so close. They were like, 20 feet. That's a little close. So, my dogs aren't perfect either.
Yeah. Jan, what's your proudest and most embarrassing moment with Bright?
Well, I would say my proudest moment was when I had her back to me as an advanced dog. So for the last 3 months before she was placed with a client, she was with me. And I had a very difficult year. It was a bit of a rough year, and I had some very difficult meetings and things to get through. And so I got a firsthand experience of what an emotional support dog does. And so she came to some very difficult things. And I remember one time I was just like, my heart was racing inside, and I was so uncomfortable and so distressed. And she sat up and she put her head right on my lap and just kind of put pressure down on my leg. Like, I'm here, you got this. And it moves me to tears that kind of bond that we had throughout her life, but that it was also partly just her intuitiveness and her ability to support. And so I imagine her doing that with her client, and I think that's just a pretty awesome thing. So I don't recall any super embarrassing moments. It was a few dogs ago that I had her, and so I don't remember back that far. She didn't do anything embarrassing in advanced training, so she was pretty good.
We were talking recently about how the breeder caretakers get this like puppy litter amnesia, where you forget all of the barking and the poop and the, all the things. So it appears that also applies to puppy raisers. Because I've had a few pups myself, and now that I'm thinking about it, I can't think of any embarrassing moments, but I know they were there. So, so Nicole is asking us, what qualities make an awesome puppy raiser? And I know the default would be to ask Heather this, but I'm actually going to ask you ladies as raisers, what qualities do you think you need to be successful? And then I'll let Heather finish it off from the PADS perspective.
I guess I'll go. Of course, a love of dogs and a desire to be of service in some way. It was important for me to find a way, and this ended up being absolutely the perfect thing for me. And just, I think, being willing to take on the responsibility. It isn't all fun and games, and the willingness to be to be out there and talking with people and telling people about the program and about who these dogs are, and then of course the being able to know that giving these dogs up are going to be one of the most difficult things you ever do, and also being able to see beyond that, to see what a privilege it is to do this.
Yeah.
Great answer, Sarala.
Jen, or should I jump over to Heather? What about you, Heather? What are you looking for when you're looking for volunteer puppy raisers?
I think people who are pliable, people who are not set. Dog training is always changing and evolving. And when we know better, we do better. And so someone who can adjust a little bit is always helpful. And I would say someone who's really in it for the right reasons. And people are going to have right reasons that are different all the time. But I think, someone who is persistent enough to keep trying, and someone who can take some feedback, because it is a lot of feedback. I think there's big feedback loops. Like Sorrel had mentioned a little bit, she brings Bright into class and she's not her best of the week. And so knowing that she is better on every other day than the day that I get to see her can be hard on people if you're not open to just absorb information and look for ways to get better. So I think someone who can distance themselves slightly from the behaviors your dog is exhibiting, and just being locked on that is that was like an example of who you are, would be really hard on someone, versus taking the feedback in, working on it, and trying to get you as a team better, rather than taking that feedback really personally, would be hard on people. I wouldn't say that people who do that now would be someone that isn't a good fit for puppy raiser, but I think it would be something that you would have to work on a little bit to be have the best time at pads, because I think there are some tough stuff if that's kind of how you roll. But I think there's really nothing that I would say we can't work on for the most part, as long as you're here to provide a service for someone else at the end of the day. I think the rest of it, we just kind of learn and grow and work together as a crew, really, I think.
That's awesome. And I think it sort of answered one of the other questions that just came up. So somebody that is struggling with a mental health struggle and has some performance anxiety when it comes to training a dog, and just asking what support's available for puppy raisers. I mean, I know I've been fortunate enough to be in Heather's classes over the years, and in classes with our other trainers here, is that, especially right now during COVID, there's been a lot of online stuff and kind of direct feedback on videos and such. But I think as long as, what Heather touched on, that you can take feedback and not take it as, a critique on who you are, but simply opportunity to grow and to learn. There's always kind of space there. And our puppy raisers, I think, relatively speaking, are well supported. I'm really proud of our puppy raising program. I've been in it from both ends of the leash, so as a raiser, but also as a trainer. And so we work real hard at supporting our people well. So I think the support is there, but I think for you, looking after, for the person that's asking the question, looking after you is really important. So it might be something to consider, what you're able to kind of take on, and what works best for you. So, and then finally, and I think this is a really nice place to kind of close things up. There's not a question, but a comment from our friend Carol Ann, who's one of our clients. She has a service dog, Bronx, and she says, as a client who has had 3 wonderful pad service dogs, I'm forever grateful to all the hands that have been in the mix to raise these dogs that eventually came to me. Puppy raisers are the best, and we wouldn't have our wonderful service dogs if it wasn't for them. Thank you. So she said it better than I can. So I don't know why I get so emotional over these things. Probably because I've given up a few of my own. So, it is amazing to see the work that they go on to do. And you guys have a huge, huge piece of that puzzle that you put together. So thank you for your impact on Bright's life. Thank you for joining us today. A huge thank you to Lanny, who has gotten our words up on the screen, and for Heather for the extra entertainment behind you, because that was fantastic. And it just means that signing into a PADS podcast, you're always in for a surprise. So thanks everyone for joining us and for everybody that attended. We appreciate the time you took out of your day to join us here. Next week, we are going to be talking with the advanced training team. So Miranda, who apparently is kicking around there somewhere, because we saw her dog, and some of Bright's.
Do you guys want to see Miranda without her hair done?
That's just not nice, Heather. Oh my goodness. So thank you, everyone. And yeah, tune in next Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific. And we will be live with Miss Miranda. And you'll be able to ask her all the questions. Oh, look, there's Miranda. See, she always looks amazing. What do you mean? She's like, oh, she's fixing her hair. All right. So thanks, everyone. And we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, all.
Bye, guys.